I have not done much but lug a gun around. I do not want to come home until the war is over, now I have got here, but I sometimes almost think that the Union costs rather more than it is worth. It sounds very well for these great men who live in good, warm houses and on the fat of the land to preach the value of this glorious Union. But let these same men come down here and stand as picket guards some night in a pelting storm, and if they don't get some of their patriotism washed out before morning, I'll lose my guess. Still, I would not have you think that I am discouraged, and as long as I can have the privilege of grumbling, I shall get along nicely. You want to know how I felt while in battle? Well, I suppose I feel pretty much as you would stand out and have a shot and shell and all sorts of missiles thrown at you. I've often read that when a man goes into battle, he loses all fear, and only thinks he can kill the enemy the fastest. I can imagine how a man, if he was nervous enough, could get worked up to such a pitch of excitement that he would lose all fear for himself, and don't doubt it is so in some cases. But so far as my experience goes, it is quite the contrary. For my part, I am not at all ashamed to own that I was some afraid at first, though the thought of turning around and running away never crossed my mind. It is perfectly astonishing what an immense amount of lead it does take to kill a man. If a single thousandth part of missiles thrown the other day had taken effect, every man on the field would have been killed the first hour. Bullets sometimes come pretty close to a man without hurting him, but if a cannonball or a shell hits the body of men, it makes bad work. Those bullets tore up the ground under our feet and whistled terribly close to our ears and fell all around us like hailstones. It seems miraculous that no more were hurt.
Captain Bichelle had a fine Newfoundland dog, which had been trained to perform military salutes and many other remarkable things. In camp, on the march, and in the line of battle, the dog was his constant companion. The dog was by his side when he fell. Under the dark shade of a towering oak near the Dunkard church lay the lifeless form of a drummer boy, apparently not more than 17 years of age, flaxen hair and eyes of blue and a form of delicate mold. As I approached him, I stooped down. As I did so, I perceived a bloody mark upon his forehead. It showed where the laden messenger of death had produced the wound that caused his death. His lips were compressed, his eyes half open, and a bright smile played upon his countenance. By his side lay his tenor drum, never to be tapped again. Private J.D. Hicks, Company K, 125th Pennsylvania Volunteers. At the Battle of Antietam, as one of the regiments was for the second time going into the conflict, a soldier staggered. It was from no wound, but in the group of dying and dead through which they were passing, he saw his father, of another regiment, lying dead. A wounded man, who knew them both, pointed to the father's corpse, and then upwards, saying only, "It is all right with him." Onward went the son, by his father's corpse, to do his duty in the line, which, with bayonets fixed, advanced upon the enemy. When the battle was over, he came back, and with other help, buried his father. From the person he took the only thing he had, a Bible, given to the father years before, when he was an apprentice. A salute fired early from Fort Duane in honor of the reported capture of Charleston and Columbia, SC. The colored troops reported to have taken quite an active part in the capture of Charleston, which I hope is true, as it will be the means of showing General Sherman that colored troops can and will fight. Lieutenant John Freeman Shorter, 55th Massachusetts Infantry. Though the colored troops are not equipped with guns, according to all reports, they behaved themselves most bravely and pluckily against the Marines. Corporal Roy Plummer, 506th Engineers. My darling wife, camp life is so monotonous, so much of a sameness, that it is really trying to one's patience at times. This frequently accounts for the fact that soldiers grow extremely eager for a fight. They want something to relieve the dull monotony of the camp life. This is the case at this time with our troops. I believe they would, almost to a man, be delighted if the enemy would come along. Colonel Hampton had another regiment sent to him today. He now has under his command, besides the Legion, 3 regiments and a field battery. He will now be able to give the Yanks a warm reception whenever they may choose to try to cross the Occoquan. It looked a little squally day before yesterday evening. There was a succession of fires, apparently signal fires, from up away the lines near Alexandria, down the Potomac. I don't know what was the meaning of them. It may have been their signal for an advance, but if so, they were deterred by a sleet which fell that yesterday. 2 men were skating when the ice broke and they both went down. This Georgian jumped in and saved them, and afterwards went back to show how he had saved them. When the ice broke with him, he went down and drowned before they could get him out. I wrote to you in May that Major Butler was sick. I am happy to inform you that he is convalescent. I saw him today. I hope soon to see him again in the saddle. We have a good many commissioned officers now sick. On that account, we are in bad condition for a fight. So far as the men are concerned, we are in very good fighting condition. I am satisfied that the condition of our army would not be improved by going into winter quarters without an engagement. I feel the army would be a good deal demoralized by such an event. I don't know what to think, whether they will attack us or not. I am fully confident, if they do come, that we will lick 'em. And if we give 'em a thorough licking, in their present shattered condition, I think they will begin to think about giving up. I wish they would quit their foolishness, for I tell you, I would much prefer being at home with my wife and my children. I am delighted to hear that the citizens of old South Carolina, and old Edgefield especially, have come up to the mark, without being drafted. It would have been an everlasting disgrace to have drafted the men when the enemy were on our own soil.
Does it not seem strange that I, who could not ever so much as cut a head off a chicken, should have been elected or selected in the midst of this blood? The war is eating my life out. I have a strong impression I shall not live to see the end. Abraham Lincoln. I was a gal about 10 years old, and we heard that Lincoln going to turn us free. Old missus said there wasn't nothing to it. Then a Yankee soldier told someone that Lincoln done signed the Emancipation. It was winter time and mighty cold that night, but everybody commenced getting ready to leave. Didn't care nothing about missus. Was going to the Union lines. Dayton, Ohio, August 7th, 1865. To my old master, Colonel P.H. Anderson, Big Spring, Tennessee. Sir, I got your letter and was glad to find that you had not forgotten Jordan, and that you wanted me to come back and live with you again, promising to do better for me than anybody else can. I've often felt uneasy about you. I thought the Yankees would have hung you long before this for harboring Rebs they found at your house. I suppose they never heard about your going to Colonel Martin's to kill the Union soldier that was left by his company in their stable. Although you shot at me twice before I left you, I don't want to hear of you being hurt. I am glad that you are still living. It would do me good to go back to the dear old home again and see Miss Mary and Miss Martha and Allen, Esther, Green, and Lee. Give my love to them all, and tell them I hope we will meet in a better world, if not in this. I would have gone back to see you all when I was working in the Nashville hospital, but one of the neighbors told me that Henry intended to shoot me if he ever got a chance. I want to know particularly what the chance is that you propose to give me. I'm doing tolerably well here. I get $25 a month, with victuals and clothing. I have a comfortable home for Mandy. The folks call her Mrs. Anderson. And the children, Millie, Jane, and Grundy, go to school and are learning well. The teacher says Grundy has a head for a preacher. They go to Sunday school, and Mandy and me are attending church regularly. We are kindly treated. Sometimes you'll hear others saying, "Them colored people were slaves down in Tennessee." The children feel hurt when they hear such remarks. But I tell them it was no disgrace in Tennessee to belong to Colonel Anderson. Many darkies would have been proud, as I used to be, to call you master. Now, if you will write and say what wages you will give me, I will be better able to decide whether it would be to my advantage to move back again. As to my freedom, which you say I can have, there's nothing to be gained on that score. As I got my free papers in 1864 from the Provost Marshal General of the Department of Nashville. Mandy says she would be afraid to go back without some proof that you are disposed to treat us justly and kindly, and that we have concluded to test your singularity by asking you to send us our wages for the time we served you. This will make us forget and forgive old scores, and rely on your justice and friendship in the future. I served you faithfully for 32 years, and Mandy 20 years. At $25 a month for me, and $2 a week for Mandy, our earnings would amount to $11,680. Add this to the interest for the time our wages had been kept back, and deduct what you paid for our clothing, and 3 doctor's visits to me, pulling a tooth for Mandy, and the balance will show what we are justly entitled to. Please send the money by Adams Express, in care of V. Winters, Esquire, Dayton, Ohio. If you fail to pay us for faithful labors in the past, we can have little faith in your promises in the future. We trust the good Maker has opened your eyes to the wrongs which you and your fathers have done to me and my fathers, making us toil for you for generations without recompense. Here I draw my wages every Saturday night, but in Tennessee there was never any payday for the Negroes, any more than for the horses and the cows. Surely there will be a day of reckoning for those who defraud the labor of his hire. In answering this letter, please state if there will be any safety for my Millie and Jane, who are now grown up and both good-looking girls. You know how it was with poor Matilda and Catherine. I'd rather stay here and starve and die, if it come to that, than have my girls brought to shame by the violence and wickedness of their young masters. If you also please state if there has been any schools open for the colored children in your neighborhood. The great desire of my life now is to give my children education, have them form virtuous habits. P.S. Say hi to George Carter, and thank him for taking the pistol from you when you were shooting at me. From your old servant, Jordan Anderson.